Parents lied to me about the day and time of our flight so that I would miss our trip to Hawaii. Where are you guys? I asked arriving at the airport. We are in Honolulu. My mom dared to ask, why didn't you come to the airport yesterday, sweetie? I couldn't believe it. When they returned, I had been looking forward to this family trip for months. A once-in-a-lifetime vacation to Hawaii, sun, beaches, adventure. My bags were packed, my excitement through the roof. But when I arrived at the airport, ready to check in, something felt off. My parents weren't answering their phones. My heart pounded as I called again. And then finally my mom picked up. Her voice was casual, almost too casual. Sweetie, why didn't you come to the airport yesterday? I felt the air leave my lungs. Yesterday? No, that couldn't be right. I checked my ticket again, today's date, just as they told me. That's when it hit me. They lied. My own parents gave me the wrong day and time so I would miss the flight. And now they were in Honolulu without me. I stood there, gripping my phone, trying to process what had just happened. 1,000 questions ran through my mind. Why would they do this? Did they really not want me there? But nothing could have prepared me for what happened when they returned home. I stood frozen in the middle of the airport, my phone still pressed to my ear. My mom's words echoed in my head. Why didn't you come to the airport yesterday? It was as if she was playing dumb, acting like this was some kind of misunderstanding. But I knew the truth. They had tricked me, lied to me, left me behind on purpose. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing myself to speak. Mom, you told me the flight was today. My voice was shaky, a mix of anger and disbelief. I have the text messages. You gave me this date. There was a pause and then she laughed, like I had just said something ridiculous. Oh, sweetheart, you must have mixed it up. Mixed it up? My hands clenched into fists. I wasn't a child. I knew what they told me. I had packed, planned, and even double-checked the time. But now, standing here alone, I realized this wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. Dad told me the same thing. I pushed back, hoping she would at least admit it. But all she said was, we'll talk when we get back, okay? Enjoy your time at home. And then she hung up. I lowered my phone slowly, staring at the departure boards in front of me. Honolulu departed. I was supposed to be on that flight. I was supposed to be with them. But for some reason they had decided they didn't want me there. My mind raced with possibilities. Had I done something wrong? Was this their way of punishing me? Or was it something else? The drive home felt like a blur. Every mile I kept checking my messages, hoping for some kind of explanation. Maybe they'd realize how cruel this was and apologize. Maybe it was a misunderstanding after all. But my phone remained silent. When I got back to the house it felt different, too quiet, too empty. The suitcases were gone, their usual chaos missing. That's when the weight of it all settled in. They really left me. I scrolled through my messages again, looking for a clue, anything that could explain why. Then I noticed something strange. The group chat with my parents and my siblings was emptier than I remembered. Some messages were missing. Deleted. My heart sank. They had been talking about the trip, making plans, and somehow I had been cut out. How long had this been going on? How far back did the lies go? I started piecing things together, thinking back to the past few months. There had been little signs, things I ignored, like my mom's hesitant tone whenever I brought up the trip, or how my dad kept telling me to double-check my ticket. I thought they were just being forgetful. Now I realized they were covering their tracks. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes I pictured them laughing, relaxing on the beach, pretending I didn't exist. The next few days were a blur. I barely ate. I barely spoke. My friends texted asking how Hawaii was, and I couldn't even bring myself to answer. How was I supposed to explain that my own family had abandoned me? Then one evening I saw them post a photo. My parents, my siblings, all of them together, smiling under a perfect Hawaiian sunset. The caption read, "Family trip of a lifetime." I felt something inside me snap. They didn't just leave me, they were rubbing it in. They hadn't even bothered to check in on me. Not a single text, not a single call. It was as if I didn't exist. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't some misunderstanding. They had planned this. Deliberately. But why? I spent the next few days obsessing over that question. I thought back to every argument, every small moment where I might have upset them. But nothing made sense. I had always been a good kid. I followed their rules, got decent grades, never did anything to make them hate me. Yet, they had left me behind like I was nothing. Then something even stranger happened. One night, I overheard my aunt talking to my cousin on the phone. They didn't know I was listening, but I caught something that made my stomach drop. "She doesn't know," my aunt said in a hushed tone. "They didn't tell her." I felt my pulse spike. "Tell me what?" I waited for more, but the conversation shifted. Still, it confirmed one thing: I was missing something. Something big. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how carefully they had orchestrated this. The deleted messages. The vague excuses. The fact that not a single family member had reached out. This wasn't just my parents. Others knew too. They were all in on it. The longer they were gone, the more I spiraled. I barely left my room, replaying every moment, every clue I could find. My anger turned to something deeper: hurt. I wasn't just left out. I was erased. Finally, the day came. Their trip was over. They were coming back. I sat in the living room waiting. My heart pounded as the front door opened. My mom walked in first, her face lighting up like nothing had happened. "There's my sweet girl," she said, arms outstretched. I didn't move. I just stared at her. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Her smile faltered. "Why what, honey?" I clenched my jaw. "Why did you lie to me?" She sighed, setting her bag down. "Oh, sweetheart, it was just a mix-up. You always get so emotional about things." I felt my hands tremble. "Stop lying." My voice was sharper this time. "I know it wasn't a mistake." My dad walked in next, pausing when he saw my expression. My siblings filed in after him, avoiding my gaze. For the first time, I saw it clearly. Guilt. Not shock, not confusion. Guilt. They knew exactly what they had done. But instead of explaining, my mom just shook her head and laughed nervously. "Let's not ruin a good night. We brought you souvenirs." She reached into her bag, pulling out a cheap keychain and a t-shirt. As if that would fix everything. I didn't take them. I just sat there, staring at the people I had once called my family, realizing that whatever reason they had, they didn't even have the decency to admit it. And in that moment, I knew things would never be the same again. I sat there in silence, watching my mom hold out the souvenir like it was some kind of peace offering. A cheap keychain. A t-shirt. As if that could erase what they had done. My fingers twitched, but I didn't take them. I wasn't a child they could distract with gifts. My dad cleared his throat. "Come on, kiddo. No need to be upset. It was just a little mix-up." Mix-up. There it was again. That same word, that same excuse, as if I was too dumb to understand what really happened. My siblings avoided my gaze, shuffling past me like I wasn't even there. They knew. They all knew. And yet, none of them had warned me. I forced myself to speak, my voice colder than I expected. "Tell me the truth." My mom sighed, dropping the souvenir on the coffee table. "Honey, you're overthinking this. We were sure we told you the right date. You must have written it down wrong." A sharp laugh escaped me, but there was no humor in it. "I didn't write it down. I have your text. You told me it was today." I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the messages I had saved. "See? Right here." Her expression didn't even change. She just shook her head. "Phones can glitch, sweetheart." I clenched my jaw. My dad walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder, but I shrugged it off. "Let it go," he said softly, almost like a warning. Let it go? I had spent days alone, confused, spiraling over why my own family had left me behind, and they wanted me to let it go? I turned to my siblings. My younger brother, Jake, shifted uncomfortably, pretending to be busy with his backpack. My older sister, Emma, just rolled her eyes and walked toward the stairs. "You're being dramatic," she muttered under her breath. Something inside me cracked. Dramatic? Dramatic? I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. "You all knew. You knew I wasn't coming, and no one said anything." I looked between them, waiting for someone to deny it. No one did. Instead, my mom forced a smile. "Sweetheart, we had a wonderful trip. Let's just enjoy being back together." A chill ran through me. She was acting like this was normal, like I was being unreasonable for questioning it. I swallowed hard. "Tell me the truth," I said again, my voice lower this time. "Why didn't you want me there?" Silence. A long, heavy silence that filled the entire room. My dad exhaled, rubbing his temple. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? My heart pounded. You deleted messages. You changed the date. You made sure I wouldn't be on that plane. So tell me, what was it like? My mom's smile faltered just for a second before she forced it back. Honey, we love you. We just thought. Maybe you needed some time alone. My stomach twisted. Time alone. I repeated, barely recognizing my own voice. That's not an answer. She opened her mouth, but my dad cut in. Enough. His voice was sharp, final. It happened. It's over. We're not talking about it anymore. I stared at him, my pulse hammering in my ears. That was it? That was all I was going to get? Jake finally spoke up, his voice quiet. We didn't have a choice. I turned to him so fast he flinched. What does that mean? He looked down, gripping the strap of his bag, but my mom's voice cut in quickly. Jake, that's enough. I wasn't imagining it. There was something else. Something bigger than just leaving me behind. I turned back to my mom, my voice shaking with anger. So that's it? You're just going to act like this is normal? Like nothing happened? She sighed. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Nothing. I felt the weight of her words settle deep in my chest. I had spent days trying to figure out why my family had abandoned me, why I wasn't good enough to be included, and to them it was nothing. I swallowed hard and took a step back. Okay. My dad frowned. Okay. I nodded slowly. Yeah. Okay. I grabbed my phone and walked past them, my body numb, my heart pounding. If they didn't want to tell me the truth, fine. I would find it myself. That I spent the next few days in a haze, constantly on edge, unable to shake the feeling that something was seriously off. I went through every conversation in my head, replaying each word they had said, trying to catch a slip-up, a hint of the truth. But it was like they had all rehearsed their parts, every one of them sticking to the same story. The mix-up, the misunderstanding, nothing more. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. Nothing made sense. Why would my parents, people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, do something like this? What had I done to make them leave me behind so deliberately, so coldly? It was a Friday evening when I decided to confront them again. I couldn't just let it go. The uncertainty was eating me alive. I needed answers, not more of their empty excuses. I waited until my mom and dad were in the living room watching TV, as if everything was normal. My siblings were out with their friends, leaving the house eerily quiet. My heart raced in my chest as I walked toward them, the tension in the air thick. Mom. Dad. I said their names slowly, making sure they heard the seriousness in my tone. They looked up, the flicker of uncertainty crossing their faces for a moment before they forced smiles. Hey kiddo. What's up? My dad's voice was too casual, too dismissive, as if trying to brush off everything that had happened. I wasn't about to back down this time. I want the truth. About Hawaii. About everything. My mom sighed, her eyes narrowing slightly. We've already been through this. You're making a big deal out of nothing. No, I'm not, I shot back. There's more going on here, and I need to know what it is. They exchanged a brief glance, and for the first time I saw it. Fear star. It was so quick I almost missed it, but I saw it. They were afraid. Afraid of something they didn't want me to find out. You don't need to know anything more, my dad said, his voice hardening, his eyes narrowing. It's over. You need to move on. I felt a cold wave of dread wash over me. What were they hiding? And why was it so important for them to keep me in the dark? I took a step forward, my heart hammering. Why didn't you want me there? I asked, my voice trembling now. What's so bad that you had to leave me behind? For a moment, neither of them said anything. It was as if they were both calculating their next move, trying to figure out how to keep their lie intact. Then my mom's eyes softened and she looked away. Sweetheart, you wouldn't understand. I'd understand better than you think, I snapped. I'm not a kid anymore. I deserved the truth. The room fell silent, thick with the tension that had been building for weeks. I could hear my own breath, ragged and uneven, as I stared at them, waiting for one of them to crack. Finally, my dad spoke, his voice low and steady. It's not what you think. We didn't want you to miss out. What does that even mean? I asked, frustration bubbling over. You made sure I missed out on everything. I was excluded and you've acted like I don't even matter. My mom flinched, but my dad stood firm. You're not seeing the bigger picture. The bigger picture? I repeated, my mind racing. What bigger picture? There was a long pause, and then my dad's voice dropped, barely above a whisper. It's not about you. It's about us. About your mom and me. I felt a chill run down my spine. Us? What did that have to do with anything? What was so important about their relationship that they needed to exclude me from the trip, from the family, from everything? Before I could ask another question, my mom interrupted, her voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. You don't understand because you weren't there. You didn't see what we saw. You weren't in the situation we were in. I took a step back, trying to process her words, but my mind was spinning. What situation? They hadn't even told me anything. Stop protecting me, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. Tell me what happened. My dad looked at my mom, and there was something unspoken in that glance. Something heavy, something buried that neither of them wanted to bring to the surface. It was like I had just unlocked something they weren't ready to face. Fine, my dad finally said, his voice tight. It's not what you think. But we couldn't risk it. We couldn't let you be a part of this trip. What trip? I demanded. My mom shook her head. You wouldn't understand. It's better this way. Better for who? I asked, my voice breaking. What's better about leaving me behind? I thought I was part of this family. We never wanted this to happen, my dad muttered, his eyes looking anywhere but at me. But it was too dangerous. For you, for us. We couldn't, what? I urged. What was dangerous? What could be so bad that you had to leave me behind? For a moment they just stared at me. The air was thick with unsaid words, with lies that had been carefully constructed over time. I could see it now, how everything about this trip had been a carefully orchestrated plan. A plan I hadn't been a part of. And then finally my mom spoke again, her voice trembling. It wasn't just a vacation. It wasn't just a trip to Hawaii. It was something else. Something we weren't sure you could handle. The words hung in the air, and I felt a chill run down my spine. What do you mean? I whispered, but they both stayed silent. And in that silence I knew whatever they were hiding, it was worse than anything I had imagined. And I wasn't sure if I was ready to find out. The silence that followed felt like it stretched for hours, but it was only seconds. My mind was racing, trying to piece together my parents' cryptic words. What were they hiding? What was so dangerous about the trip to Hawaii? I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest. What are you talking about? What could possibly be so dangerous? My dad looked at my mom, and for the first time I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not the usual tired frustration. This was different. My mom's hands trembled as she picked up her coffee mug, her gaze flicking nervously around the room. She wasn't meeting my eyes. I wasn't going to let them brush me off again. I took a deep breath, my voice steady but demanding. Tell me, what happened in Hawaii? There was a pause, and then my mom whispered almost too quietly to hear. It's not just about the trip. It's about him. I froze. Him. My dad's face paled, and I saw him flinch. Don't do this, he muttered, his voice tight with anxiety. We agreed to keep it quiet. Who is him? I demanded. What are you talking about? Before they could answer, the doorbell rang. A sudden interruption that shattered the tense atmosphere. My mom shot a look at my dad. A silent exchange between them before she stood up, looking flustered. I'll get it, she said, too quickly. I stood frozen, my mind spiraling, but I couldn't make sense of what was happening. The room felt colder, heavier. My dad stood up too, but not to go with her. Instead, he walked to the window, his back to me, clearly avoiding eye contact. Something wasn't right. My mom opened the door, and I could hear her talking to someone in a low voice, but I couldn't make out the words. Something about it felt off, though. My instincts were screaming at me. I couldn't stand it anymore. I walked toward the door, trying to act casual, but my heart was racing in my chest. I peeked around the corner, just enough to see who was standing outside. And then I saw him. It was someone I didn't recognize. A tall man in a dark jacket, his face partially obscured by a hood. But what hit me the hardest wasn't his appearance. It was the way my mom's expression changed the second she saw him. She looked terrified. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't just about a family vacation. This was something else, something deeper, something dangerous. My mom had been hiding this. She had been hiding him. The man said something I couldn't hear, his voice low and urgent. My mom nodded, and I saw her glance back toward the house. I quickly ducked back behind the wall, holding my breath. "Mom!" I called out, walking back into the living room. I had to know what was going on. I had to know what was happening behind the scenes. She walked back into the room a moment later, her face ashen. Her eyes were wide, and she looked around nervously before speaking. "You need to stay inside. Don't leave this house. Do you hear me? Don't go near that door." "What is going on?" I asked, my voice trembling with confusion. "Who was that?" She didn't answer at first. She looked over at my dad, then back at me. Her expression was a mix of fear and frustration. "I told you you wouldn't understand. This isn't something we can explain right now." I was losing control. "You're lying," I shouted. "You're hiding something, and I have a right to know what it is. What's so dangerous? What did I miss?" My dad finally turned around, his face grim. "It's not safe for you to know, okay?" "Not safe," I repeated incredulously. "Not safe for me to know? What about you? What's happening? Who was that guy?" But just as I was about to press for more answers, I heard something that made my blood run cold. An unmistakable sound of footsteps outside the window, heavy and deliberate. Someone was walking around the house. My heart skipped a beat. The man outside wasn't gone. He was still here. Dad, what's going on?" I asked again, but now I wasn't just scared, I was terrified. "I need you to go upstairs," my dad said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "And you need to stay there. Don't come down. Don't open the door. Promise me." Everything in me screamed to resist, to demand the truth right then and there. But there was something in his tone that stopped me. The fear. The urgency. It felt like something was closing in around us. "Promise me," he repeated. I wanted to argue. I wanted to yell. But for the first time I felt a cold, sharp edge of fear I couldn't explain. Something was happening. Something that involved more than just me being left out of a family vacation. I nodded, barely able to speak. "I promise." Without another word, I turned and ran upstairs, my mind spinning in circles. I barely reached the top step when the sound of a loud bang echoed from downstairs, sharp, sudden, and chilling. I froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The weight of what was happening hit me all at once. This wasn't just about family secrets. This was something worse, something much darker than I ever could have imagined. I crouched by the top of the stairs, my heart pounding, listening for any sign of movement below. I could hear muffled voices, a heated argument, then silence. The quiet was worse than the noise. And then the worst thing happened. I heard a door open. And footsteps coming up the stairs. My breath caught in my throat as I heard the footsteps getting closer, heavy and deliberate. My mind raced, spinning, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Why was someone coming upstairs? Was it the man from outside? Was he part of whatever twisted secret my parents were hiding? I pressed myself against the wall, trying to stay as quiet as possible. My heart was hammering in my chest, and I could feel the cold sweat on my palms. I could hear the creak of the floorboards as the steps neared my room. My hand instinctively moved toward my phone, but it was no use. If I tried to call for help, they'd hear. I couldn't make a sound. The footsteps stopped just outside my door. I held my breath, praying that whoever it was would leave. But instead the door handle turned. Slowly, quietly. I squeezed my eyes shut. I couldn't believe this was happening. How had everything escalated this far? The door creaked open, and I could see a shadow in the doorway, but it wasn't the man from outside. It was my dad. He stood there for a moment, his face pale and strained, before stepping inside without a word. I felt a rush of confusion and relief, but it quickly faded as I saw the look in his eyes. There was something in them, something dark, something I hadn't seen before. He was holding something in his hand, something small and metallic. My mind raced to figure out what it could be, but before I could process it, he spoke. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said, his voice trembling. "Find out what?" I whispered, barely able to form the words. My body was frozen in place, every instinct screaming at me to run, but I couldn't. Not yet. My dad took a deep breath and sat on the edge of my bed, his hand still clutching the object. I could see now that it was a small silver key. The kind you'd use for a lockbox, or my stomach dropped, a hidden compartment. It's all true, he said, his voice barely audible. We lied. But we didn't do it to hurt you. We did it because we thought you wouldn't understand. Understand what? My voice cracked, the desperation creeping into every word. What's going on? He exhaled slowly, his eyes full of guilt and regret. There's a reason we didn't want you on that plane. We knew if you came you'd figure it out. We couldn't risk it. The room felt colder. My pulse was thudding in my ears as I waited for him to continue. We weren't going on a vacation. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. We were going to meet someone. Someone dangerous. I shook my head, unable to make sense of it. Someone dangerous? What do you mean? Who? He looked down at the key in his hand, his fingers curling around it tightly. You don't remember him, but you should. His name is Jacob Carter. Your real father. My chest tightened. I could feel my world unraveling. What? My dad's face softened, regret filling his eyes. It was before I met your mother. Before we even knew each other. Jacob was someone I had to get away from. He's not someone you want to know. I felt the ground beneath me shift, my mind struggling to process his words. What are you talking about? I don't have another father. You do, he whispered, his voice breaking. You were so young. We kept it from you because he's dangerous. He's been watching you. I was silent for a long moment, the weight of his words crashing down on me. My heart raced as everything I thought I knew about my life, the family I thought I could trust, began to crumble. I hadn't been left behind because they didn't want me there. I had been kept away for my own safety. Why now? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why are you telling me all of this now? He stood up, pacing. Because he found us. After all these years, Jacob has finally found us. And we couldn't risk him coming after you. I didn't know what to think. Part of me wanted to run out of the room to escape this nightmare, but another part of me wanted to hear more. I needed answers. I needed to understand how my life had just changed. Where is he now? I asked, the words barely escaping my throat. My dad paused, his face draining of color. He's already here. He's in this town. The room seemed to close in around me. The tension, the fear. Everything was suffocating. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down, but I still didn't understand. Why had my parents hidden this from me for so long? And why had they gone to such lengths to protect me? Suddenly, I heard the faint sound of a knock at the door downstairs. My dad looked at me, his eyes wide. Stay here. Don't open the door. I didn't move, but the panic began to rise in my chest. He was here. Jacob Carter was here. And I was trapped in this house with him. With the man who wasn't even my real father, who had been lying to me my whole life. The knock came again, louder this time. And then the doorbell rang, persistent, urgent. My dad ran for the door and I followed him, my body tense with anticipation. He opened the door slowly, his face betraying the fear I hadn't seen before. And then I saw him, standing on the doorstep. The man who I had never known but had always been watching. It was Jacob Carter, my biological father, and he was smiling. But then something even more unexpected happened. A woman stepped out from behind him, a woman I knew all too well. My mother. My heart stopped. My mom, the one who had lied to me for years, the one who had kept me in the dark, now stood beside the very man who had haunted my every thought. You lied to me, I whispered, my world shattering all over again. I stood frozen, my heart racing, my world shattering in front of me. The woman standing next to Jacob Carter wasn't just anyone. It was my mom, the woman I had trusted more than anyone. The woman who had kept me safe for years. And now she was standing there, side by side with the man who, up until this moment, had been nothing more than a mystery. You lied to me, I whispered, barely able to get the words out. The weight of betrayal settled in my chest, suffocating me. I didn't know who to look at first, Jacob, whose presence sent a shiver down my spine, or my mom, whose face was full of guilt and regret. Jacob smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was cold, calculating. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he said softly, his voice surprisingly calm. But it's time you knew the truth. I felt a surge of anger rise in me. The truth? All these years you've been lying to me? Keeping me from knowing who I really am. My mom's eyes were filled with tears, but she didn't speak. She just stood there, looking as though she had aged 10 years in an instant. Her shoulders slumped and she finally met my eyes. I never wanted you to know, not like this. I thought I was protecting you. Protecting me? I repeated incredulously. From the truth? From my own father. Jacob stepped forward and I instinctively took a step back. You need to understand, sweetheart. This wasn't about keeping you away from me. This was about protecting you from him. My heart pounded in my ears. Him? Who are you talking about? Jacob glanced at my mom, who closed her eyes as if bracing for something painful. Your mother and I were involved with some dangerous people before you were born. We were both running from our pasts, trying to keep you safe from the chaos we left behind. I could feel the tears stinging at my eyes. I hadn't imagined anything like this. All my life I believed my family was normal, that we were just like everyone else. But now I was standing in front of a man who was supposed to be my father, hearing about a past I never knew existed. I don't get it, I said, my voice shaky. If you were both running from something, why didn't you just tell me the truth? Why keep me in the dark? My mom finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Because after all these years I thought I had outrun it. We both thought we had. But Jacob, he never stopped looking for you. He never stopped looking for us. I felt the weight of her words settle over me like a heavy fog. The life I'd known, the safe, predictable life with my mom and dad, was built on a lie. And now everything had come crashing down. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But somehow I stayed rooted to the spot, unable to move. You don't have to be afraid anymore, Jacob said, his voice strangely soothing, as if he were trying to comfort me. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to make things right. I've spent years searching for you. I wanted to be in your life, but I had to be careful. I couldn't just walk in and destroy everything. I could see that he truly believed that. He was trying to convince me that all of this was done for my own good. But it didn't make sense. How could he expect me to accept him after everything? After all the lies? You can't just walk in and say that everything will be fine, I said, my voice steadier now, though the anger was still bubbling under the surface. You don't get to decide what's right for me. I'm not some secret you can keep in the shadows. Jacob's face softened. I know. And I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to hurt you. You have every right to be angry. But you also have to understand that there's so much more to this than just a family secret. There are people, dangerous people, who are still looking for you. Looking for both of us. The fear that had been lurking in the back of my mind came rushing forward again. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. There were real consequences to this twisted family history. What do you mean? Who's looking for us? Jacob's eyes darkened. People who were part of our past. People who won't stop until they get what they want. They're dangerous and they'll stop at nothing to get what they think is theirs. I swallowed hard, trying to process his words. My head was spinning. My entire life had been a lie, and now I was being told that there were people out there who might want to hurt me, who might want to take me away from the only life I knew. Why are you telling me all this now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't protect you from afar anymore, Jacob replied. We've been running for too long. But now that you know the truth, you need to make a choice. You can stay here with your mother and father and keep running, or you can come with me and we can face this together. The offer hung in the air like a heavy decision I couldn't avoid. I didn't know what to say or how to react. Part of me wanted to lash out. I wanted to leave, to distance myself from everything that had just been revealed. But another part of me wanted to know the truth, wanted to know what kind of person I really was. Was I just my mother's daughter? Or was I something else, something tied to a past I didn't understand? Before I could answer, I heard a voice from behind me. It was my dad. You're not going anywhere with him, he said, his voice firm. I turned to look at him, my heart breaking all over again. Dad, he stepped forward, his eyes full of pain. I made mistakes. But I did it because I wanted to keep you safe. You can hate me for the lies, but I love you. And I won't let you go with him. I didn't know what to say. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, betrayal, anger, confusion. I could feel the pull of my father's love. But I could also feel the draw of the truth Jacob had brought into my life. Everything had changed. In the end, I didn't know if I was making the right decision. But I knew one thing for sure. My life wasn't going to be the same anymore. The truth had come to light, and there was no going back. The only question now was whether I could make peace with it, or if I would continue to run from the past. And as I looked at both men, the father I'd always known and the one I'd just met, I knew that the choice would be mine to make, but the journey ahead was still uncertain. And for the first time in my life I was okay with that.